This is probably the biggest risk to the Gen AI assistants out in the market and the legal specific tools in the market, because we are seeing lawyers asking for Claude Enterprise licenses.
Are there going to be as many innovation jobs as there were trainee jobs?
I think we still need to be hiring enough trainees to make sure the pipeline of talent exists, because otherwise you disappear as a firm.
How do you project into the future at a time when the world's just spinning faster than ever?
It's quite rare to have like a dedicated research and development team in something like the law firm.
You've mentioned in the past that it's very much a hybrid buy and build strategy. I guess the obvious question is, what are those decision points?
Like, actually the value that it brings is still super high. So we haven't felt the need to go and do like a big rollout of a different Gen AI system.
Welcome back to Without Limitation. This is the podcast where we meet the people who are reshaping the legal industry. Now, should law firms buy technology or should they build technology? That's a topic I got into today with Michael Kennedy. Mike leads the R&D team at Addleshaw Goddard. It's one of the UK's largest law firms. And the firm has developed and rolled out a proprietary AI solution called AGPT. Mike was instrumental in that, and I asked him what was behind the decision to build something rather than buy something. And what does it look like to manage a team of developers, build a roadmap, maintain and support a proprietary tool within a law firm? We got into Mike's framework for when to buy, when to build, and when to take a hybrid approach. And we spoke about technologies like Claude and whether Mike sees opportunities for law firms to be rolling out those frontier tools within large law firms. Finally, we touched upon career paths, and Mike himself has a really interesting career path. He was one of the first in the UK to follow a training contract as a junior that was focused very much on innovation and legal tech. So I asked him whether he anticipates that others will follow in his footsteps and whether this is just going to become the new normal for the training of junior lawyers in the UK or beyond. It was a really interesting discussion, and I think if you are a law firm wrestling with the buy versus build decision, if you're a vendor thinking about how you might partner with law firms to co-develop things, or how to position your solution to law firms to help them through that buy versus build decision, I think you'll find this really useful. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here's my discussion with Michael Kennedy. He leads the R&D function at Addleshaw Goddard. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. Good to see you again.
So I wanted to start, Mike, with your career path. There seems to be a bit of a theme on this podcast where I'm talking to people who have got sort of unconventional career paths. And I read that I think you were one of the first in the UK to do a training contract, qualify as a solicitor in a way that was quite orientated towards legal tech. So can you just share a little bit more about how that came about? Did you go into law with that always in mind? Did you just sort of find your way into it? And what did that training contract look like?
Yeah, so there's three of us that did this, what feels like quite a long time ago now. It was something that didn't really exist as an option until we pushed for it a little bit, and we sort of said, this would be something we'd be interested in. We would want to do, it was basically instead of picking, like I had a training contract and I didn't want to turn that down, and then I guess like decided to not do that. So I sort of looked at how I could do that in a bit more of a hybrid way with a more of a tech focused role. But I never set out to do this journey. Like I'd set out in a very traditional career path. I did a law degree, I did law at college even, and I was sort of always had the vision of I will go and become a lawyer, and that's what I was supposed to do. The more I did it, so I didn't massively enjoy the legal side of my law degree, but I really enjoyed it. Like a philosophy of law module. And I went to a university that had like a critical law school, so that we looked at a lot of like international law. The philosophy of law stuff was really interesting, and I sort of got used to questioning things a little bit more at university, but still then went down the traditional route. I actually left university sort of swearing off being a lawyer, and went and worked in restaurants for a while, and then came back to it as you do because you've done law review, so you should go and try. And then worked at Addleshaw as a paralegal, got my training contract, and throughout that, I guess like period beforehand, just started to get more and more involved in a bit of a different way of doing things, started to see opportunities to fix problems that were there. I was never super techy, but I was quite keen to do things differently and to figure out. I'm one of those people that's almost like, there must be a better way of doing this. If I'm going to do something, if I've got to press a button 1,000 times, I will press it 100 times and go, all right, I'm not doing this 900 more times. So how do we automate this? And yeah, me and a couple of others sort of came together in that. And then Kerry Westland, who heads up the team, managed to get a bit more of a impetus from the firm to allow us to do something a little bit different.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And like I say, somewhat consistent actually with some of the other guests I've had on the podcast. Richard Tromans, for example, from Artificial Lawyer, he had a whole career before he really got into the world of law.
Cool.
I think he spent 10 years traveling around Europe, traveling around the world. And it sounds like you did a number of things beforehand. You mentioned working in kitchens and retail and things like that. And I often think that's actually a good thing for working in a law firm. I think it gives you a much broader range of perspectives on the world, and it perhaps allows you to step back a little bit from the day-to-day legal work and challenge the ways of doing things, because you've seen things in other industries, processes probably in retail or those kitchens where you worked that give you just a different viewpoint. I personally think that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And it gives you people skills as well. I'd probably say makes you resilient, which is quite useful as a paralegal or a trainee. It was quite nice to do like a 16-hour day sat down when I joined the firm. So it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And yeah, I definitely think it breeds a bit of resilience into you. And we see when we do a graduate scheme as part of the innovation team, and we see some of our really strong candidates have got experience in other areas, whether that's working for a university or doing something afterwards. It's a little bit different to the traditional, and you can really tell when you do those interviews.
And obviously you were one of the first in the UK to follow this new path. It sounds like the firm has started to get behind this, whether it's through the graduate scheme or training contracts. Is that the case? Is it now, what started perhaps as more of an experiment has actually become more embedded in the way that you guys are training and bringing in junior talent?
Yeah, definitely. We as a team have gone from that initial handful about 10, 11 years ago to about 80 people now. So a huge innovation group now with a real wide range of roles and talents and skill sets and focuses. And we've been able to do that because we've been able to build out a bit of a reputation from those early years of fixing problems, getting things done, building relationships with clients, and getting to a point where it made sense to do more of this and to build more and more of it out. We don't really do the training contract route in the same way because we essentially do the graduate scheme, which is a 2-year process where you do 6 different seats in a similar way as you would in a training contract. You just do 6 instead of 4. And you do that across the group in lots of different teams and then end up qualifying into one of those teams as a legal technologist. And that's been a really good way to get people into the team and into the profession for a job that is really hard to hire for. Like there's not that many people out there that have a huge amount of experience in doing this job and are not happy where they are. Like, yes, there are people that do this role. There are people at all the firms that do this, but you end up having to just move people around. If you're constantly going, oh, actually, we need to grow as a team. We're one of the biggest teams out there, and it's quite hard to go and get talent in to make that team better. And so a few years ago, we thought about growing it ourselves and what do we need from people. And that's worked really, really well and has built a really good talent pipeline for us for people like most people fresh out of university that are interested in a legal career, but not necessarily a lawyer's job. So that's it's opened the door to a different way of hiring and a different career path rather than trying to persuade a trainee to do this. You'll actually get someone at the beginning who's like, I would like to do this job because of, background or because of interest or because they want to be adjacent to legal stuff but not necessarily a practicing lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, what you've just described is almost like the shift that's happening in the industry at that macro level. You guys are seeing this in the way that you're actually recruiting on the ground. I mean, there's a lot of talk about Are there going to be jobs for junior lawyers? And, I sometimes go and do a bit of lecturing at Sussex University and speak with law students. And there's obviously concern about, well, are there actually going to be jobs for lawyers? But from what you're saying, there's also now a cohort of people, perhaps a little bit like you, almost following in your footsteps a bit, who, yes, they took a law degree, but actually they're interested in law as a business, or they're interested in law as a process and solving problems. And yes, that could be going and being a lawyer, but it could also be joining an innovation team and getting into R&D and that other stuff, which I think is promising. I suppose the question, which I don't think any of us have the answer to, is it going to be a 1-for-1? Are there going to be as many innovation jobs as there were trainee jobs? I think it would be nice to think that there will be at least as many, but I'm just not sure any of us know or can predict yet whether it's a 1-for-1. What would have been a trainee is now an innovation person. So we'll have to see. Mike, let's fast forward to the role today, if we could. Your title is around R&D and innovation. Can you just share a little bit more about the role as it is now?
Yeah, so I run our research and development team, which is part of the broader innovation group. The role, I guess the tagline for the role is, how do we de-risk what's 2 years out? So how do you look into the future in a way? So how do you get a crystal ball out and think about what are we going to do in 2 years, in a year, in 18 months? Where are we going to be? What technology do we think we will need? What problems are we going to be solving? And how do we get to a position now that doesn't surprise us, and that isn't scary, and that isn't something that we don't have a grip on? That's not quite as crazy as it sounds, because law is quite far behind the broader world on technology, and that has changed a little bit recently, and some of the stuff we're doing is a bit more aligned to what is happening in the real world, I would say, outside of law firm. But traditionally, you can sort of look at the trends in wider markets and think this is going to come our way, so we need to get ahead of it, we need to understand it. I spend a lot of time with startups. I spend a lot of time with people who are like looking to found businesses or have an idea or are a bit more like evolved. So we first met a while back around some of the stuff there. So speaking to companies and looking at, yes, things that we might buy and bring in as a law firm. So doing that horizon scanning of the market to look at the tech we need, but also having those conversations with people, being able to think about where are the gaps in the market that people are trying to fill, and is that something that they might need in the future? I do a lot of education stuff as well. So education internally, so training people on the new things. So that could be, I was obviously very busy around in 2023 around ChatGPT, large language models, both internally with our lawyers, with our partnership, and with clients. So a huge amount of AI literacy training, a lot of engagement on use cases, a lot of engagement on what we can do with these tools with our lawyers and with our clients, as well as buying things that we bring into the firm ourselves. And then doing the development side of things in how do you prototype tools? How do you work closely with our IT function and our software development function to build stuff and to bring things out? We do a lot of work around solving problems that either no one has solved yet in the firm and we're struggling a little bit, or we think should be solvable, but we just don't know how big of a problem it is, don't know what the opportunity is. So doing some of those prototypes and solving things is a big focus of my team. And always has been as we've evolved as a function, because it's quite rare to have a dedicated research and development team in something like the law firm. And it was traditionally that side of desk, but as we've grown, we're lucky enough as a group to be able to say, this is a really important thing to do. And it's one of the reasons that we have managed to keep changing and to keep evolving and to make sure we've got things in the firm that make sense. But you can't do that side of desk. The market is so big now that you can't just do it alongside a day job.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, and you talked about prototyping and building things, and we're going to come on to one of my favorite topics, which is vibe coding. And I know you're a vibe coder from time to time as well, Mike. And you also kind of got into the buy versus build stuff there, which I want to talk about. Just in terms of the looking 2 years into the future, that's really hard, isn't it? Because things are just changing so fast. We can look 2 years into the future, but then next week, one of them, whether it's Gemini or Anthropic or OpenAI, release a new model, which kind of makes all projections wrong. At a practical level, how do you try and stay up to date with what's going on? You talked about sitting down with startups. Is Is it that? Are you looking at other industries? Are you looking at software engineering and sort of like the stuff that's happening there? How do you project into the future at a time when the world's just spinning faster than ever?
Yeah, I kind of don't switch off, and I'm always reading stuff. I'm always listening to things. I have a lot of research agents that I use, so I've got like quite a good Claude Code set up on research agents. I do it a newsletter, so I do a fortnightly newsletter that is internal only. So I just do it for the group and the team. I don't want to go and compete with the behemoths out there and newsletters. But I do an internal newsletter. So every fortnight I do like three key focus, like 3 things to know, 3 deep dives and like why they matter to us as an innovation group. And then like a big list of here are things that are worth reading, here's stuff that's happened in the market over the past 2 weeks. So that is a really good way I almost do that as a byproduct of the fact that I'm trying to stay on top of things. And that's like a good way of disseminating that to the team. Obviously, like they say, like prediction's really hard, especially about the future, don't we? So like it is tough, like stuff changes and there will always be things that pop up that you have to react to and you can't be perfect on stuff. And we did a really detailed AI strategy plan for what we're going to do with AI back in 2023 to the board of the firm. And we did short-term, medium-term, long-term plans. When we went back to reassess it 9 months later, we had done all the long-term stuff. Like it'll move so quickly that our 5-year plan became our 6-month plan. And that will always happen, especially with the speed that, the world is spinning at the moment. I think because I'm so interested in change, I do look at other industries. I do subscribe to a lot of different things. I read a huge amount. I spend a lot of time. Most of my free time is reading stuff about legal tech or like the tech world, which sounds super lame, but actually I'm not really like a doom scroller. I'm not really a social media person. I don't really do much else. I'm not as sad as that sounds. Like I do other things in my life. But like if I'm on my phone, I'm probably reading an article about something that's happening in the world. And I do like it. I am interested. And it's so important for me. It's really important for me in my role to know what I'm talking about. And I'm not afraid to say I don't know, but I don't like saying I don't know. So I would rather know and do it. So I sort of take that quite seriously and try and make sure I
think that newsletter you described is a great habit to get into. And like you say, not just because it benefits the people who are reading it in the firm, but it kind of forces you to be on top of it as well and get thoughts out of your head about what does this actually mean. And I know a few others who produce those newsletters internally as well. And I definitely recommend others do it too, because it's the best way to stay on top of things. But it's also, I think we're all feeling, I'll speak for myself, I'm a bit like you. I'm genuinely really interested in this stuff and I want to stay on top of it. But there's also an element of me, which is like, I think sometimes it's okay if a week goes by and you haven't got the daily news about every single model release and perhaps there's Claude, for example, they're shipping like every 24 hours now. And it's okay if you're out for a week and you out of the office for a week and you don't know what happened in that week. We're all sort of playing catch up. And I wonder if it's almost going to be a bit unhealthy if the expectation for all of us is you got to know within 6 hours that Satya Nadella's announced Copilot co-work and this has happened. But I think we're all feeling that. I think we're all in the same boat. And I keep saying to people, like, no one's really behind, like, or at least we're all equally behind. I think if you just started reading up on this stuff today, you could catch up pretty quickly because it's just moving so fast.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about some specific projects, Mike. So obviously AGPT, you guys have won multiple awards around that, and it's been tremendously successful. And for those who don't know what it is, can you just share a little bit more about AGPT, what it is, why you guys built it? And I think it's a rare example of a large law firm that has really invested in its own technology in that way. So why did you guys go down that path?
Yeah. So AGPT is what most people just call a wrapper. So it's an LLM chat tool similar to a ChatGPT or Claude that allows our lawyers access to the large language models through a useful interface that is AG branded. It lives in our Microsoft Azure environment. We've got like no data retention. We don't do any like reporting on the information that goes in, and we're opted out of all the like abuse monitoring type stuff. So no data goes anywhere. And it does things like document review, translation, the usual like chat interface. There's a prompt library in there. There's things where you can build your own like personal prompt libraries. there's like citation tracking and document viewer and things like that. So it's your like classic AI assistant type tool. And the reason we built it was back in, this year, 2023, so March 2023, I think. Early 2023, we were obviously looking at GPT 3.5 for legal. So like, how does this work for legal documents? Is it good enough to do what we want it to do? Does this unlock some of the things that we've been trying to solve for a long time? So we actually did quite a bit of R&D on GPT-2 previously for like document comprehension. So the concept of being able to extract a clause using a tool like Kira and then read that clause to tell you, is this a problem or not? Like, what's the actual risk extraction? We looked at GPT-2 for that and it was sort of okay, but the workflow didn't really work. So we had lots of ideas that weren't possible that we thought this might be possible, but not really a way to test it properly because you can't just go and ChatGPT and chuck a lot of documents in. It was very early days. And I sort of just we as a team tasked the devs to build a sandbox of our hit an LLM with some data, get something back and see what it looks like. And that became AGPT. So in those first few months, it was just for us as a small team to do some testing of the large language models. And more lawyers started to ask us about ChatGPT. So I want access, I want to play around with things. So we rolled it out to a pilot group in the firm in like mid-23. And then in the autumn, we rolled it out to the whole firm just as actually this works. And there's no reason if it works for 5 people, it works for 100 people, it's going to work for 3,000 people. And so we released it, rolled it out, did a lot of training, and then did that follow-up things on that prompt training, all that type of stuff. And so the reason we built it initially was sandbox, but the reason we rolled it out and kept it was the demand was massively there. Like people really wanted something safe and something that was within our network. Because we still have this challenge. We have clients who don't let us use like cloud, don't let us use generative AI, don't let us use third-party solutions for things. And that circumvents a lot of that because we can say this data is living in the same place as the data you send us anyway. So it's not a different environment. There's no other parties involved other than Microsoft, obviously. But we have agreements to use Microsoft anyway because you can operate if you didn't do that. So that meant that you could say to a lawyer, you can essentially do whatever you want in this. Like you can put anything in here and you don't have to worry about having those conversations about security. You don't have to worry about terms. You don't have to worry about doing the consent piece with clients because we have it here. And that was a really good way of getting engagement and people to go and come back to us with ideas of better use cases, your imagination, because they're playing around with things. And yeah, it has been really, really successful. And we keep it up. We keep developing it. We've got a product team. We brought some people into the business that can run those teams better than people like me. Like I'm very much and this is why I like the vibe coding. I'm like, oh, I want all this, please. And the devs will go, okay. Like, so yeah, great. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And so we brought people in that are better at that stuff. And yeah, it's gone from strength to strength. And we initially thought this would be a really good learning opportunity, be a really good tool, something to do before we evolve into something else potentially. And that line has just kept moving away. Like actually the value that it brings is still super high. So we haven't felt the need to go and do like a big rollout of a different Gen AI system as of yet. And I know a lot of firms have, but a few firms are doing similar things to this. I know the guys at Simmons have got their similar thing called Percy, which is very similar. And there's quite a good ethos there between balancing like the stuff you can buy on the market and the things that you can build. And they don't have to be as good. I'm not sat here saying it's as good as something that the tech companies can build, but it's good enough for what we need it for.
Yeah, that makes sense. And on the dev team and the maintenance front, what does that look like in practice? You know, like we were just discussing, constantly Anthropic or OpenAI or someone's releasing new model, new features. Is there a sense of, you know, we're constantly in development mode because there's always going to be stuff that new model capabilities that we then unlock new opportunities for us with AGPT, or is it in kind of a steady state? What does that look like kind of day to day with the dev team, just keeping on top of the maintenance and the continuous improvement of it?
Yeah, we are constantly in dev mode. Yeah, I think it's the way things move at the moment. If you're standing still, you're going backwards. Like you really are, like falling behind on things. We have sort of like two, I guess, like squad teams, devs. We've got like 12 developers and it's two separate teams. And they sort of bounce between lots of other, like we don't just do AGPT, there are other things that we build across the firm, but at least one of those teams will be doing something related to AGPT every single day. Like there is always something. We have quite a big roadmap still, so there are a lot of things we still want to do and want to add to it. There's the new models being released and things that are coming in. We've recently done some stuff with Google Vertex to bring Gemini into it. So that's underway at the moment because we were Microsoft. So we were just the models that are now built Microsoft. So we're looking at how we bring some of the Gemini models in to do some of the more complex use cases that we're struggling to deliver with the GPT models. And that keeps our team super busy. So it is ongoing. There's like, it breaks down then that you need to react to people. We have about, I think about 1,000, maybe 800 active users a day. We do about 6,000 prompts a day. So when it goes down, you really realize how much people use it. Like it's almost like silence until they go, oh, it's not working. There was like, why is this not working? So yeah, it's a big commitment still to build things.
Yeah. And it's a product. It is a product in and of itself. And so I guess it comes with all the same support, maintenance, roadmap stuff that, a commercial product being sold into the firm would come with. And I think it's really interesting. You mentioned Simmons, but there aren't that many others who have gone down this path. And I think it's relatively unique. And you've mentioned in the past, Mike, that it's very much for you a hybrid buy and build strategy. There are things that you will buy and there are things that you will build. I guess the obvious question is that sort of a flow chart, and what are those decision points? How much of it comes down to cost? We know that some of the legal AI providers aren't cheap and they're probably going to get more expensive because compute is going to get more expensive in the next couple of years. So is it cost driven, or is it driven more by, we know our business, we know our clients, we know our lawyers better than any provider, even with a forward deployed engineer, is ever going to? What are the main decision factors for you guys in that?
Yeah, so it is like cost, it does come into it, but probably more on the return on investment conversation. So it's not so much like, yes, some things are expensive, but actually if you can leverage that to do more things and to make more money, then that's okay. You can justify that cost. And the build side and that institutional knowledge is really, really important because you have that trust in the firm and that you can spend more time with your own lawyers about the things they need, and you can build for your audience in a way that you just can't buy for an audience and this is another advantage of us doing some of the R&D stuff is you can sort of get in quite early with startups and be like, here's my wish list of stuff to build. Here's my wish list of things to build. Can you please do it? And we'll buy the product. And that's a good way of almost doing a bit of you build it for me and that will help. But often that's not possible. So actually understanding what people want, what people will use, and what people won't use is really important. So you can build if you look at a product, you might need 30% of it. It might be better to build that 30% than to try and drive adoption with 70% of your relevant. With people that would get switched off when they think, oh, that doesn't matter for me, rather than, well, that's fine, so I'll ignore that and look at the thing that does matter. And the other thing, and probably the most important thing, I mentioned the client consent stuff, which again is a big thing for us. If we can do that self-hosted, then it's better. But probably the most important thing is flexibility and like the avoidance of over-reliance and the lock-in, the focus on our IP, that is just the ability to build things that's like transferable. So we talk a lot about like portable intelligence at the moment with AI, and actually being able to take something from one tool to another is going to be really, really important, I think, in the next few years. And I've seen this I'm one of the refugees from ChatGPT into Claude in the past 6 months. And actually I built up so much in that ChatGPT space that I was like, oh, I'm actually quite stuck here. But then working out ways to go, like, I can port a lot of this into Claude. I want to make sure we have that concept as a law firm where we can say, we have done a huge amount of work here on specific ways to solve use cases, prompt libraries, flows that we built. I want that to be tech agnostic because the value is in the solution solving, not in the tech that you use. So that's another like lever we'll pull on when we look at building something, is how important is that element of it versus the convenience and the, like, someone else is looking after a product, someone else is doing the development. It will be cutting edge because they have to be competitive. And they'll move quicker than us as a law firm. They don't have to put the new models through as many, and jump for as many hoops as we do. So yeah, balance between convenience and that importance of flexibility.
Yeah, and I think standards can play a role here as well. Like if you take something like skills, it started off as just being a Claude thing, an Anthropic thing.
Yeah.
But now it seems to have been adopted by OpenAI as well. I'm not sure yet about the legal AI vendors. I don't think they are deploying it in quite the same way. But personally, I can see a world in which skills libraries almost become the new KM, and firms will have their skills libraries, and they need to be portable, because who knows which model is going to be better. It's an arms race right now, and we need to be able to move. So let's talk about Claude, because both you and I are big fans of Claude. We ping each other from time to time with cool stuff that Claude is doing, and vibe coding and all of that. I wanted to talk about Claude from two perspectives, Mike. So there's Claude Code, and there's Claude for building and vibe coding on the one hand, and then there's also Claude as a tool for legal work or legal project management or the practice of law stuff. And if you can you just share a little bit more about how you're using Claude, whether personally or within the firm, I suppose through both of those lenses, Claude to build stuff through vibe coding, and also Claude for the actual knowledge work itself?
Yeah, so for the vibe coding stuff, I'd sort of made my way through ChatGPT Codec stuff, the AI Studio app, the Google AI Studio app. I tried Lovable, I tried Replit, and the Claude Code, like the way that, and so I am on a Windows PC. Unfortunately, I do have an Apple sticker stuck on it, but it is not a Mac. So I couldn't get a desktop until it came up to Windows. So I was sort of like a bit late to it compared to, I guess, like this software world and people doing things. And I had been reading about a lot of the vibe coding using it, and I was getting good results with other tools, but it was the thing that made it click, and I can build all these files out on my computer by using the terminal. I use Whisperflow for anything I need to do that's more than 30 seconds typing, I'll voice to text it. So doing a lot of that in the terminal with Claude Code, initially doing it in the desktop app, but then I quite liked that I could view the documents next to it instead of it being separated out within the desktop app. So doing a lot of vibe coding there, building things, doing really simple things like being okay, cool, we've finished that, just so I can test it. And it will set up a Docker container. It will launch it on my computer. It will then launch the front end, open it on my browser. And that's 2 minutes of clicking around to do that. But I just look I'm in here, and then I can go, I don't like this, change this or fix this. That's the wrong chain of blue for AG, for example. So I've got a long list of things I would like to do, like building different apps and stuff. But I mainly use it to build out prototypes that I can then sit with the team. So maybe the dev team, or maybe the wider team, or maybe lawyers, to say, we have so many things that come to us as ideas that are actually really difficult to execute on. Obviously, ideas are easy, execution is the super hard bit of most things. But being able to say, can I just test that this thing that I built is trying to solve that idea that you've had? What do you think? So we're doing some stuff around regulatory horizon scanning for banks at the moment, and building out a really big reg matrix with all of the obligations tracking, terms, horizon scanning that's coming down the line. And that's something that our financial regulation team wants to do for a long time. And I should be able to show them and go, is this what you mean? They're like, oh, yes. Then obviously I'm not going, okay, here you go, done. But then that's the idea, is then tested, and we can go speak to the dev team. So on the vibe coding stuff, find it really useful, find it really user-friendly. And the team are doing this who are not technical. I know at the beginning, my background is not a technical background, but I've become technical throughout the past decade. But there are people in the team who are not technical at all, who are doing this and doing this really well.
And I just want to jump on that point, actually, because, there'll be people listening who will have heard that, and you're talking about, well, I'm in the terminal and then I'm launching it in Docker, and it all sounds complicated. I think what you said there about actually the barrier to entry is not as high as you might think. And I always just say, just go ask it, just go tell it, just say to Claude, honestly, I don't know how to launch what you've built in my browser. Can you please do that for me? And, it's a circle of trust between you and Claude. Give me the idiot's guide to this. Or I've heard of these skills files. What actually are they, and how might I use them? I work in an R&D team, or I work in an innovation team in a law firm. What might I be able to do with this? Start from that. If you can read, you can cook, or if you can ask, you can cook. And it's really not as scary as it sounds. I think your journey there is actually the one I always recommend for people getting into vibe coding, is start with something like Google AI Studio, because you will have a prototype in 60 seconds from prompt. It will appear on screen, your idea as a working prototype. And now, will it be ready for production, deployment, and confidential data? Absolutely not. But you will have something on screen, Google AI Studio, then Replit or Lovable, because they're a bit more advanced, and then Claude Code. Like I think that's the journey that I do think people should go on. And it's massively exciting, isn't it? Because you can do things that you've just described there. Like, you can sit with a lawyer or you can sit with a client and you're almost co-developing on screen, rather than sitting there taking notes and saying, oh, okay, so you'd like a jurisdictional map for this, horizon scanning. Let me write that down and put it in a Word document as a product requirement and send you an email. And then 6 months later, we release it and it's not what you wanted. And you could be sat there and together rebuilding it or building it there and then. And I just think that's a massive opportunity that both legal tech companies should be leaning into in co-developing, but also teams within law firms. There's absolutely no reason you can't have an innovation team in a law firm building things with the lawyers. So I just think it's a really exciting development, and it's great to hear how you're already using it within the firm. Where do you see it going next, Mike, with that use case? Can you see a world in which the lawyers are doing some kind of sandboxed vibe coding? Can you sit there building artifacts in Claude or something? Or do you think for now it's very much, innovation teams sitting in a room with the lawyers and with shared screen and doing it together?
Yeah, I think especially on the product development side, I think it is, you will have, I don't know, 0.1% of lawyers will do that, build that scratch your own software development where they're like, I need this thing, I'm going to go and build it. You were seeing some of that like in like the market now. People are talking about this quite a lot. The legal quant stuff is a really good example of a group of people coming together to do that. Obviously, the vibe code stuff that you've set up, you've seen people sharing things that they've built because they care about that they're solving a problem for them, but they are the exception, I would say. I think in law firms and in most places, it's, you want an innovation team or a technical team or like even just like a bit more process-driven people rather than the lawyers to do the work and just get feeding from the subject matter experts. I think we've had this before in a way with the automation with no code, when people talk about we can build out no code apps. And we have always owned that as an innovation team. So we have built ideas for people. And we've done like the hard yards of execution and making that work. And they've been the feed into that. I think where this might get more into their space is some of the knowledge stuff. So I use like an Obsidian notebook thing and Claude Code alongside that to basically do like knowledge work. So like put information into that, use templates to draft things, do like writing blog pieces, writing talks and scripts for things and doing like newsletter research is a good example. So having like different sub-agents doing lots of different research that's based on several template documents, such as these are my sources I care about. Here's a tiered list of those sources. Here's the market themes that I want to talk about. Make sure you hit at least 3 of these in every single issue. And then here's the template set out of the newsletter. I can then say, do edition 40, go. Okay. And I know exactly, like it knows what it's doing because it's got like the architecture around that in the knowledge like hub. And I think that's where, like, I agree with you that those are artifacts and that data will be the knowledge that people have to look after, but it's a lot less involved because you can say, is this thing useful to put into my, people will call it that, I don't know, digital twin, brain, like whatever it ends up being branded. Is it useful? Am I going to need this again? Put it in that and it becomes like a persistent memory that you can work with. That I think is a massive opportunity for law firms, always individually, but also then a knowledge team to say that becomes that institutional intelligence. So that's I think that's next. I think that's what we will see more of. Yeah. And it's happening in pockets now, but some firms who do knowledge management really well will be the first to sort of cotton onto this, I think.
Yeah. Just now when we were talking about Claude, we talked about the vibe coding side or the agentic engineering side of it, but then there's also the Claude for knowledge work itself and for legal work and for KM and that side of things. Are you seeing a world in which, you would have KM teams using Claude to do deep research or precedent maintenance or those kind of things. And even a step further, are you seeing a world in which the lawyers are using Claude for substantive legal work? Or how do you see the adoption of Claude in law firms, to the extent that any of us can foresee anything with the pace that things are moving?
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest risk to the big Gen AI assistants out in the market and the legal specific tools in the market, because we are seeing lawyers asking for Claude Enterprise licenses. We're seeing people use it for research. We have, if you think about a team, let's say like a competition team in a law firm, they will be doing a lot of work Googling stuff. So they're already going to the web and being like, oh, this is our client. I need to find any press releases that talk about these specific things. That is that's like a trainee's job to troll through the internet to find that type of stuff. That is a 5-minute job in Claude now. Like, that type of work is so much easier in Claude, and you find so much more than you would find with a trainee doing it manually. And that's like competition is a good example, but lots of teams and law firms do research that is not just legal research, it's factual research. It's finding information from the web, it's finding things that are out there. And with some of the MCP work and seeing some of the stuff that I manage doing with MCP that is plugged to Claude, I know you're talking about the mid-page stuff, which is like doing the research piece. And we're seeing other like legal research providers making their content more accessible to agents, in that they'll sort of sell it as we're making it accessible to agents, but more just you can prompt and you can find things. So I think that is catching up, and that people are wanting to do this, and they're seeing that there's time saving there. We have Microsoft Copilot as well, which people have been doing that type of stuff with already. And as that improves, and I've not got access to the co-work stuff yet with Copilot, but as I will do a proper test of that when that comes out, because that might be a stopgap in that you're not sending people to Claude. But we are the first time in a long time, first time ever, we're seriously considering, do we need an enterprise license of some of these for, not as an enterprise rollout, the whole thing, but like to make sure the terms are enterprise, to give it to 10, 20, 50 lawyers who would really benefit from it. And that's without thinking about your BD team or like internal operations teams and things who would find value in that as well.
Yeah. I'm bullish on Claude or some of the frontier tools, and I like you. I don't necessarily see it as a replacement for a focused legal AI tool. I think there are still going to be specific use cases for those, but those use cases aren't the only things that go on in law firms. To your point, there are other things that go on in law firms involving BD, involving web research, involving creating content and documents that aren't docx files, and perhaps even creating mini apps or artifacts or disposable apps and all those other things that we've spoken about, where I think there's a great case for things like Claude. Next week it might not be Claude. We might all be migrating back to OpenAI or Gemini or something else. But there's a lot to learn from other industries, and I think it would be a shame for us only to use legal AI tools. I think they've got a place, but I also think those other tools do as well. I've spoken to 5 firms in the last week who have bought Claude licenses to differing degrees. Most are just buying for KM and innovation teams right now. But others, I know of one other that's going further than that and involving lawyers in it too. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
So Mike, I'm conscious of time, and there are just a couple of bits that I wanted to wrap up with. The first is going back to where we started. You had this super interesting career path. Tying that to vibe coding, you built a thing recently which was about training junior lawyers. You know, there's a lot of talk in the press about, well, how are we going to train junior lawyers when they're not sat in a room with a Lever Arch file, reading every page for proofreading or due diligence? Share a little bit more, if you would, just about that app that you built, why you built it, and your take on training junior lawyers.
Yeah, this is a classic. I've got like a note file which has got what you might call startup ideas that I will never do because I'm obviously too afraid to go and do a startup, stay in the safety of a big organization.
Yeah.
But lots of things that over the years I've been like, oh, that's an idea actually. The stuff with Barcode has basically meant that is now a to-do list. Like, it's no longer just oh yeah, maybe that's an idea. And it's now possible to build things. And I I get asked this question all the time, which is, how do we train junior lawyers? What's going to happen to junior lawyers? And I do, similar to you, I do some lectures at universities. I do a lot with Manchester University. And this question comes up every single time. I was at BPP last week, giving a part of a panel. And again, this came up from students. How are we going to train? How are we going to be as good as the people that supervise us today in 10 years' time? And I think that the way training works in law firms at the moment and always has, it almost works by accident. Like, it works because trainees are usually super bright, super engaged, super driven people who work really hard because the culture is hardworking, and like everyone knows law is a difficult job and it's long hours. So you expect that and you just do it and you get your head down and crack on. And people got that learning by osmosis. You're sitting next to someone learning by accident like that, like teach with the red pen to be like, right, this is all wrong. And then you do it again, and you do learn that way. It's quite a slow process to learn. And often you don't learn, you learn the way of an individual, your supervisor, or the people you work with, rather than learning an approach or learning like genuine knowledge. You just learn. If you don't come across something, you don't learn it. Like, it's not like a structured, like true education, really. Like that apprenticeship model is learn on the job. And if that goes away, and I don't think all of that will go away, I think that will still be there. And I think we still need to be hiring enough trainees to make sure the pipeline of talent exists, because otherwise you disappear as a firm. If you stop hiring junior talent, you won't have any senior talent. So then what do you do in 10, 20 years? But I think that a really good solution to this is using the data and using the knowledge that you have in a firm to build out simulation, build out tests, to build out exercises that you can say to a trainee. Let's say we do reduce the work that we need trainees for by 20%. Instead of saying we need 20% less trainees, you could say our trainees do 4-day weeks. And actually on one of the days, they do a simulated matter day where they do, as part of their seat, they have different exercises, they do different work. We have built these matters from genuine client matters that we've anonymized and built into exercises. And then we've built like a metric system, scoring, measurement, and that can go on their file as this was their performance in their job, but also on the simulated exercises that they've done, which will help you follow where do people go? What are people good at? What areas do they need to work on? And it means that they genuinely can focus on learning something. And if you're reducing the amount of time that they're spending on this type of work, you're also reducing the amount of time supervisors have to supervise them. So in theory, you're freeing up senior time to deliver more training and to do more like knowledge work. It is a little bit optimistic in that some people will say, well, what will actually happen is everyone will just fill their hours with more work and everyone will make more money because that will be the business driver. But I think we really have to have a much longer term view on this. We have to be really conscious that this is quite a big change to an industry that has not been super receptive to change over the years. And it's a genuine change in like how people learn and how people deliver work and learn how to be like excellent at something. And this won't just be just for law. Like, there'll be so many industries will go through this where you need to think about how you impart knowledge that is, if the apprenticeship model starts to crumble a little bit, which I think is a really interesting challenge for learning and development professionals, knowledge professionals. That's not obviously our job so much as innovation, but we can help them with the technology. So that's sort of where the app idea came from, where I was building it out. And I will speak to our L&D team about that as maybe something to roll out internally.
Yeah, and for anyone who wants to take a look at Mike's app, go to vibecode.law. I think it's in the February leaderboard, and it's well worth a look. And I think what you've laid out is one of the more practical takes on junior lawyer training that I've heard. And as you say, we've perhaps got to avoid the temptations to try and fill every hour, which maybe goes against law firm economics a little bit, but fill every hour with, okay, now you can do 57 SaaS agreement reviews in a day instead of 1 or 2 or 5. And maybe setting aside some time for training. And as I'm saying that, I'm realizing that I'm about to go buy 2 more monitors immediately after this so that I can have more versions of Claude running in parallel. So I'm probably not the best example of that, but we do need to, I think the burnout risk is real, and we do need to set aside time for not sitting with agents churning out work product and actually spend it on more valuable endeavors like training. So Mike, I could go on We've covered a lot of ground. I think it's such an interesting story that started with your training contract and being one of the first in the UK to go down that path, and has evolved into, I think, quite a unique role in the UK legal industry. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts. Looking forward to seeing what you build next. Sounds like maybe not a startup, but perhaps an intrapreneur. That's what I would describe you as. So looking forward to seeing what you guys build.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. So yeah, really good to chat, and speak soon.
Thanks for your time. Cheers, Mike.
Thank you.